Well, good morning. It was so great to see the award dinners last night, all the winners. Congratulations, that was awesome. And also the individual achievement awards. I'm so blessed to be involved in this time and era where we're seeing so much transformation. I've been in internetworking and networking for decades, I think 30 plus years. And I think this is the most exciting time ever in my whole career, so I'm really blessed and excited. Let me talk about what we're going to be working on and talking about in this session. This is the vision that the board asked me to put in place in April at our Greece meeting. The board approved this vision and the strategy, and now we're executing on the strategy. So I'd like to take the time on this session to articulate that vision and strategy. And let's just go. So basically, number one is we're seeing that there's a big change. As you know, this digital transformation is showing up everywhere. It's changing lives, the processes, everything's digitizing. All that information is going to be stored in the cloud. I mean, today it's hybrid, some on the premise, some on the cloud, but most of it's going in the cloud and will continue to be that trend. And I think we've seen enough presentations on that, so I won't spend a ton of energy on this. But there are some really key significant challenges that the consumer of the telecommunication services are facing. And this is something that they've never really grappled with in the past. And number one is, as they go to the cloud, they're faced with so much cloud complexity. Some data is on-prem, some is on the cloud. They all have a multi-cloud strategy, especially the medium, large, and the multinationals. And they're also plagued with, how do I make sure that the food chain from where my device is to the cloud, how does that food chain working and operating correctly for my applications? How do I get visibility? As you've heard from many people, why SD-WAN's become such a big technology. How do I make sure that that posture, whether that user is mobile or at the work, is actually getting secured? So these are the kind of areas the enterprises are being focused on and challenged on. And really, the service providers have their equal challenges. And mainly, we've heard it throughout the sessions and keynotes. There are bandwidth and margin erosion. We heard that from Kevin O'Toole. We see highly manual process still being involved, especially intercarrier. The provisioning timelines being long. Everyone wants everything now. And the complexities, of just the OSS and integrating the modernization of lifecycle service orchestrators into legacy systems. So these are all huge complexities. So really, what we've done at the MEF, in 2001, we started this carrier Ethernet, or this Ethernet wave, and it drove for a very, very long time. And back then Ethernet was in the LAN, and Ethernet past the LAN was just crazy and blasphemy. Now Ethernet, and carrier Ethernet specifically, is pervasive and ubiquitous all over the world, and it's the predominant technology that's tying in everything in the information systems, in my opinion. And MEF has been the sole authority to driving that. And it's now an $80 billion market, 50 billion services, 30 billion products, and continues to grow at rapid rates. But really, what we've decided was, as a mission, and this is a big mission, is to basically take what we've learned and the gold standard, what we've done in carrier Ethernet, and apply this to other services, what we're calling this cloud-native services, where all the telecommunication industry is moving towards. These kind of services that are cloud ready, that have the built-in orchestration capabilities, have the assuredness of the bandwidth, the performance of the applications, the security. These are very critical areas. And all of that can't be static. It can't be about people provisioning that. It has to be about machines that are driving those assured services. And those machines have to be not only be within the service provider network, but have to be interconnected, as you'll see and we'll talk about. And they often have to continue going in the ecosystem in the enterprises and in the hyperscale OTT. So that whole ecosystem has to connect eventually. So that's the automation. So really, MEF has the credibility, has the track record, has driven an $80 billion market, and we want to apply that rigor and gold standard to the rest of the services we'll talk about. So basically, we believe that the services, what we do with carrier Ethernet, and as you can see, that you could say this is a really big vision and mission. And I'll show you how we've also already executed on this. But basically, this is a very large market for our member base to go after. It's not just about moving bits from one location to the other. It's about making those bits very intelligent. And I think we're already on that trajectory, and we've seen a lot of sessions talking about that, so I won't spend a lot of energy. But like I talked about, these services have to be interconnected with automation, and that's really what MEF's now taken on. It's the service definitions that we're really good at, that gold standard, that how a service should behave, not how it's implemented, but how it should behave from a buyer or between two operators, that behave in that language, and then how to make that automation work. And that automation we're really focused on is a bunch of set of APIs. So what do I mean by the APIs? As you can see, we released a couple of years ago this framework that now has driven lifecycle service orchestration. And that lifecycle service orchestration is basically about these reference points. So we decompose what we believe lifecycle service orchestration should be, and we've described these reference points, and now have become industry standards, and we are now describing APIs on these reference points. So with this mission, this vision, big, bold, just like in 2001 was Ethernet was going to go everywhere, and at that time it was only in the LAN. We have a big, bold mission and vision. And I want to talk to you that not only do we have that mission and vision, it's not just pie in the sky, it's not just paper and slides, it's real activities, and we got significant traction. I'm going to go through that. So at MEF17, we launched our big framework called MEF 3.0. MEF 3.0 is really about this idea of 4 quadrants, these services. I talked about just briefly this automation, mainly around APIs, and I'm going to dig into this. And then about our certification that is well known in the industry. That certification is basically now very agile. It's cloud-based, it's on demand, and so we even transformed how we do certification. And then finally, we moved into the world of a community that can partner and do syndicated R&D together of our members, who can actually work on projects without having to write paper. And we'll talk about more of that. So we have a very expanded community, and I'm going to walk around these quadrants really fast and talk about where we're going next and how we've changed the MEF process to be very agile to deliver on this. So the first thing I want to talk about is the services. As people can say, hey, big vision, bold vision, mission, but geez, it's going to take you to boil in the ocean. The answer is no. We're actually being very methodical about and very surgical how we're executing on this. And as you can see, the first 3 layers, IP, optical, and carrier Ethernet, it's already being released. We already released specifications in this area, and we'll continue to evolve that, especially carrier Ethernet. And those are kind of legacy services. We all know how to do that. But the important aspect is we've made them orchestratable ready. They're not just static services that you can't have an API to. We have defined the attributes that APIs can use to build out the data models, so they're orchestratable ready. And I'm proud to say today, we released out this week our SD-WAN specification, the first in the industry to define how and what is SD-WAN, the language, the behavior, and more importantly, the application performance objectives and how to measure that. So I'll go more into that. As we move up, and I'll talk about the end, we'll move up the stack, we'll go up into other areas of other virtualized services. But right now, we're executing on the bottom 4 that I've just described. The other area that, in your SD-WAN, for example, I talked about this. It's describing the framework, the architecture, the language. It's describing the constructs. And it's also describing, if you download the spec, the actual application, how to measure application performance, how to group applications, how to get performance objectives out of it. So I encourage you to get the spec if you're a member. And we're hoping to make this publicly available because it's part of our new model to have early standards draft, early standards to be put to the public to get feedback. So the other area I want to talk about is our LSO API roadmap. As you can see, we're already executing on lots of areas in this. We already did Presto. We already did Legato. We're now releasing in a developer release preview the Sonata work. And we continue to evolve. And you can see at the very top the core and framework. We had the MEF55 architecture. And we'll continue to evolving the actual foundations for LSO all the modeling, the framework, the process, and so on. So there's a lot of activities in many work streams in all of these areas happening from our members. And kudos to our membership for delivering a lot of this vision. So I'm going to cover just briefly on Sonata. That's another big release we announced at the show. It's available for developer preview. And I'm going to get into the actual kind of roadmap. So these are some of the use cases, the ability to check an address, to be able to check the inventory of the address, of what's available, to get a price quote, to basically place an order. So this is BSS to BSS, the business systems doing that automation between providers. But as you can see, it doesn't stop there. We're already halfway into trouble ticketing. Work's already started. It's halfway being evolved, and eventually we'll release that shortly in a release 2. And we'll continue to evolve into the whole idea of the whole contractual billing. We just went into letter ballot for our commercial attributes project, which will then drive the ability to deliver on contract and billing, and finally the ability to settle on money. This is all very important aspects of the business to run a business. So really proud of the work the team did here. Again, execution, services, execution, SD-WAN, execution, APIs, execution. It's not pie in the sky. It's not paper. It's not vapor. And in fact, I encourage you'll see you can actually download the SDK to actually see all these APIs. So the other part is our certification. We have a certification roadmap. I won't have time with the time I have left here. It'll be available. You can talk to our certification committees. But basically, we have a plan, a roadmap how to deliver certification. And it's not just the services that are static, but also orchestrated. As you can see, we have for Sonata, we have a timeline to deliver on certification for Sonata around the operator services. We also have for SD-WAN. We have a plan for delivering certification. And then obviously for the other services I talked about, layer 1 optical, IP, and so on. Like I said, I won't be able to get into the whole, let me go back here. I won't be able to get into this given the time period I have and everything else I'm going to cover, but I encourage you to talk to our certification committee chairs, and Iometrics is our house that's doing a lot of the certification. You can talk to them. The other part is, I like to say, is our community. Not only do we have a community rich full of developers who are helping, in fact, the Sonata work was done by developers. It wasn't done by a bunch of scientists. It was done by actual developers who have to work on with APIs. We have certification and professional certification. We have a whole environment of to be able to put projects. We have implementation projects. Most of the POCs you're seeing are coming from implementation projects that are within the MEF from members. Actually, instead of going in paper, they're demonstrating very, very innovative ideas in actual proof of concepts. And those are implementation that continue to run throughout the year. And in MEF19, you'll see even more innovation building upon that. And then finally, I'd like to talk about the new announcement we talked about this week was an Enterprise Advisory Council. This is really great for us, and we're really, really pleased to have this. And the reason is this closes the loop in our membership. Today we have a lot of service providers, 130 plus service providers. We have a lot of vendors. And now we finally have the other part of the equation, the enterprise. And I specifically went after the multinational enterprise, the guys who are running big, big networks globally. And we wanted to do 3 things with them. We want them to help us understand what are they trying to do with all of the cloud stuff. So make sure that our MEF 3.0 framework is actually aligned with where they are on their journey, in their transformation journey, their digital transformation journey. The second thing is most of these multinationals are like mini operators. They are building and bringing in automation, virtualization, SDN into their environments. And they want to understand how providers are approaching it from a huge macro level so that they can implement some of those functions and understand some of the challenges on how to implement. And specifically, automation is a very key area. And that automation in the enterprise will have to tie back to the automation of the service provider because the whole ecosystem has to be connected. So that's a really important aspect. And then finally, we want our enterprises to advise our members on the activities and the workflows that we're doing, all the various things on services, APIs. We want them, even on the POCs, we want our EAC to tell us how are we doing, or what's our thinking, what's our prioritization, do we have it right? is this kind of on top of your mind? So we're really proud to have this Enterprise Advisory Council. And you can see some very big names, and you can go to our website, see the bios of the people participating, all architect types who are actually looking at these problems. So we're really, really excited about this. So I want to talk about what we've done as part of MEF to accelerate adoption of 3.0. We've done something, I think, as an SDO, very few organizations have done. We've become highly agile. And I remember a couple of years ago, I talked about, I think, or even last year, I said, we're going to be scrappy. And that's exactly what we've become. We're agile, scrappy, and we're delivering just like, instead of being a nonprofit organization, we're delivering as an actual organization and implementing and doing and making things happen, all through membership. So the number one I want to talk about is that the world is moving at cloud speeds. The cloud guys have taught us that if you're going to have a cloud, you're going to be cycling code in that cloud, every 2 to 4 weeks. The sprints go on, and then they release them into the cloud 1 month. And I came from Microsoft. I understand this environment. I understand clouds. And this is really important. And all our telecom industry is moving to this kind of cloud-native idea of being very fast and agile. However, commercial products are also doing that. They're actually taking open source projects, they're taking and building their own code, and they're delivering their releases in an agile model, not the waterfall model every 3 years, but every 6 months they're putting releases in. And that includes open source. And then finally, as SDOs, we have to be thinking the same way. We have to get our services, our APIs out very fast. We have to be iterative, agile, and we got to get it in market. It's all about in market. It's not just about releasing a spec. It's about getting in market. That's the most important aspect of having impact. I always tell everybody, it's not what you've done, it's what's the impact. So with that, I like to say that on the very right, these are our board members, so please forgive me for all the other service providers and members. It's not to say you're not doing it. This is really from our board members have said they're becoming cloud. They already are cloud enabled. They're cloud-like, cloud-ready, cloud-native, whatever you want, telco, cloud, all these different terms for saying I have the cloud ability to be very agile and fast. We're seeing open source. We're working with now ONAP, specifically in Linux Foundation in Casablanca. You'll see some news on that. We're working with them also on how to enable our work with them in a very agile, fast way. And finally, in MEF, I'm going to show you what we're doing to become and drive standards and APIs in market really fast. So with this, what we did is in MEF, we had this kind of waterfall model that would take years to develop a spec, and then by the time it got certified and got in market, it was 3, 4 years, and that was a waterfall model. Nothing wrong with that, so that's where we all came from. But the world has moved to very agile approaches and methodologies, and with that, we had to take an agile approach. So what we did was we incubated the idea of these implementation projects in the MEF 3.0 community, where our members could come in and stand up ideas and work with other members and do syndicated R&D and come up with ideas and say, I'm going to incubate an idea, I'm going to write some code, I'm going to learn from it, demonstrate it, just like the agile approach, bring some key stakeholders in, and then iterate again and put stuff in the backlog and then iterate and go over and over. And this is exactly what you're seeing in the POCs and our implementation projects that are doing that. So this, we learned a lot. And this is exactly how Sonata came out of. And actually, even SD-WAN, it came out from this kind of thinking. And then what we did was, just in Sonata, for example, in April, we took the work that was incubated in the community and we moved it in the committee, in the actual LSO committee. And then 6 months later, we took all that incubation work, polished it, and now released it as a developer release to get feedback. And you're going to see that developer release has got more than just paper. It's got software artifacts, and we'll talk about it in a second. And what we've done is we've taken that, sorry, let me go back. We've taken that, that thinking of the agile approach and moved that into the specification sides of the house to move the specifications faster. So incubate, take that, get in the specifications, polish it, ship it out. And in some cases where there's specs, we're also validating the specs on the other side. So this is a new process we put in place. It's board approved, and now the committees are executing on that to do some amazing committee speed enhancements. So one of the things we've done is in the committees is and one of our goals is to basically keep the MEF quality. Everybody knows that when a spec gets released from MEF, a specification, it's got a high quality bar, an incredible quality bar. But we want speed with that quality. So we've taken a minimal viable product approach into our specs. You're seeing specs that will be iterative now, not trying to boil the ocean with one spec. We are doing previews just like we're doing today. We're doing a preview for Sonata. We're doing a preview for SD-WAN. So well ahead, 3 months before it's all polished so that we can get feedback. We want the feedback. We want to make sure when we release it, we have feedback from a crowdsourcing kind of model to make sure we got everything kind of right before we go to actual published official standard state. And the other thing I want to talk about is we've gone past paper. We are an organization that's involved in software. Now, what I mean by that is we're not releasing open source, but we do have software artifacts. We're helping the developers to take the artifacts that we have and help them to have a frictionless environment. And so what do I mean by this? In our Sonata API and even the Presto APIs you can download, there's the ability to take our APIs, which has specifications, which is the bottom side there, with all the orange dots, which describes the business use case, the object models, and all the things that a designer and architect would want to understand, even a developer. But more importantly, we have a software development kit. So we allow the developer to have a frictionless experience. And that software development kit has the data models in a language they understand, and the tools that they have, which is today's Swagger Open API specification. It also has a developer guides to walk them through it. It has README files to tell them how to go through the journey to understand the technical specs and the developer guides and how to load that into the Swagger editors. And we're also incorporating test suites to test their code. Postman test cases to actually test some of their functions in our code, and even giving examples of rendered out APIs in different languages so they can have references. So this is all unbelievable that we've done this, that we're actually delivering software artifacts, not just paper. So I think this is a really great turning point for the MEF. And if you actually go into the MEF into our website, you can download this SDK, and if you want to take a picture of this, you can actually go and find that SDK, download it, a full package, and basically grab all these different types of artifacts. So really proud of the membership and the team to delivering on this. It's a first for the MEF to actually package not only paper and specs, but actually software-like artifacts. So with the 2 minutes left I have, I'd like to talk about our investments to the future landscapes. The first thing is we're taking Sonata, and we want to be able to get to those access networks. So in my last keynote last year, when I mentioned this, people said, and there was some feedback, well, how are you going to get to the thousands that don't have automation? Well, I've got an answer. We're using aggregators now. We're going to implement Sonata. I'd like to say we've had two main ones, Neutrona and Epsilon, have joined in on this project to be an aggregator that represents hundreds to thousands of access providers behind them, which they will prevent, and they will implement the BSS automation side onto the other retailers who need access to those loops, those local loops worldwide. The other one is we're also, you can see the POC on settlement, we're using blockchain to be able to exchange money in an automated way. We're working on that project, and more news to come with some organizations that will help us even speed that up. The idea that we're going to have VNFs distributed on universal CPEs, summon the POPs of the service providers, summon IaaS infrastructures that the enterprise is going to own. All those VNFs have to be distributed. They have to be coordinated. Orchestrations have to talk to orchestrations. And this is a big problem. And I talked about this at The Hague. I did a presentation on this area. And I'd like to say that we have work now to build a framework, just like we did with MEF18 for LSO. We got a framework that we're now involved with to build out this virtual reference points so that we can have virtual services that are distributed across different autonomies. So it's really powerful. We have 5G, a lot of work happening in 5G with front haul, back haul. We're working on slicing. We're working on fixed mobile loops to be able to deliver gigabit speeds on fixed wireless loops, and so on. Security as a service, a very hot area, fastest growing area, so very powerful. And then finally, the enterprise are saying they want orchestrators their orchestrators to talk to other orchestrators. So Cantata, we've got some, you can see POCs of Cantata already happening, and we're bringing in Cantata, which is the enterprise to service provider orchestrators. So with that, in summary, I'd like to say the MEF has been focused on this first 3 layers. You know, it's the platform where all our members have come from. I'm over time, so I'm going to get in trouble here, but just give me a couple more minutes, Stan. Basically, it's this platform which all operators and all our members have, which is our connectivity platform. And now we've enabled the ability to deliver that underlying orchestration automation. But where we're going with SD-WAN, it's the gateway to the virtualized world. It's where the bump in the wires, the virtualized services that will sit on this connectivity platform throughout different autonomies on the enterprises side, inside the POPs and service providers, inside IS infrastructures of the hyperscale cloud guys. All of that will have to be orchestrated on top of this connectivity platform. And with this, we have to think about that these new higher services will have higher margins. They're not a race to the bottom. Even though the volume of bandwidth is going up, it's not, the margins drop. This will be high margin services for our members to be able to capitalize on. And all of this means that we will have to be very software focused, think about virtualized aspects of how we approach the problems, and our what we call our cloud architecture framework, which is the basis to be able to house these virtualized services, is going to be very important. So with this, closing, we want our members to understand that we are there to help our members on the transformational journey. Our whole goal is to help our members, regardless of where you're on your transformational journey, at the very far right to the very far left. We're there to help and make sure that all our members become in the transformed, the digital economy, the digital transformation, and their networks are addressing the needs of their enterprise customers from a digital transformational requirements. And with that, I like to say takeaways. I talked about it, you know, MEF 3.0, critical, all about assured services, automation, certification. I talked about the acceleration of what we're doing in our community, acceleration of our software, acceleration of our basically new agile processes. And finally, our key takeaway is we want to own some new landscapes. And I've talked about them. I just concluded with them, so I've run out of time. So with that, I'd like to thank you for giving me this time to articulate the mission and the vision of the MEF and where we're going. And I'll be around for the next couple of days. Happy to talk to you. And thank you.